Billionaire caught in bed with mistress returns home to pregnant wife holding divorce papers. Hi, my very, very beautiful and loyal family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. Before we dive in, let me offer you a heartfelt prayer. May your heart be filled with peace, your soul surrounded by love, and your days blessed with joy. May healing find you, and may every silent prayer be answered with grace. Amen. My sweet family, are my stories touching your hearts the way your love touches mine? Am I giving you what your soul desires? Please tell me in the comments. I read every word with gratitude. And once again, YouTube is holding us back. But love can't be silenced. So if you feel the warmth in my stories, please like, comment, and share. Let's keep this beautiful bond alive. And now, a blessing I still can't believe. I've been gifted a beautiful granddaughter. My heart is overflowing with love. Help me find the perfect name for her, a name filled with meaning, beauty, and hope. Let's begin, my family. Let's start with love. Wind howled against the weathered windows of Bella Rose's sanctuary office, its fury matching the storm raging within her heart. The foreclosure notice trembled in her hands, its crimson letters like bloodstains on the page. 3 days remained to produce $250,000, or everything she'd fought to build. Every animal she'd saved, every acre she'd protected, would be stripped away. Outside, the rescued creatures seemed to sense impending doom, their calls rising in haunting harmony with the gale, a primal chorus of beings who'd already lost everything once before. Hurricane Eliza had devastated southern Louisiana 2 weeks ago, destroying the sanctuary's main facilities and washing away months of fundraising efforts. The weathered photograph on her desk, showing her parents standing proudly before the sanctuary's original gates, curled at the edges from the lingering humidity. They had founded this place before the catastrophic Hurricane Katrina took their lives when Bella was just 12. Now at 32, she faced losing their legacy to the same cruel forces of nature. "I won't let it happen," Bella whispered, her fingers tracing the photograph. "I promise." Her assistant Maya appeared in the doorway, her expression caught between hope and doubt. "I've got something," she said, waving a glossy invitation. The New Orleans Conservation Society is hosting their annual black and white ball tonight. Every wealthy donor and philanthropist in the Gulf region will be there. Bella shook her head, loose curls falling across her face. Those people don't care about a small sanctuary run by someone from the 9th Ward. Every billionaire conservationist in 3 states will be there, Maya pressed, placing the invitation on Bella's cluttered desk, including Bob Morris. Something flickered in Bella's amber eyes. Everyone in conservation circles knew Robert Morris III, the cold, calculating billionaire who had transformed his family's oil fortune into one of the world's largest private conservation empires. Rumors circulated about his loveless marriage to Diana Westbrook, heiress to the largest timber holdings in Louisiana. Together, they controlled nearly 1 million acres of protected land. "He'd never help us," Bella said, although a desperate hope kindled in her chest. "We're too small for someone like him." "It's our only chance," Maya replied, pulling open the office's small closet to reveal a midnight blue gown. "I borrowed this from my sister. It'll fit you perfectly." 3 hours later, Bella stood at the entrance of the opulent Windsor Hotel ballroom, feeling desperately out of place. The gown hugged her curves beautifully, but she couldn't shake the feeling that everyone could see through her facade to the mud-covered sanctuary worker underneath. Her grandmother's modest pearl earrings were her only jewelry, a stark contrast to the diamonds glittering on the women around her. Holding a champagne flute she hadn't sipped from, Bella scanned the room for potential donors. The sanctuary needed immediate funds for hurricane repairs and ongoing care for 42 animals, including several endangered species. If she could just convince one wealthy patron to help. "You're not drinking," observed a deep voice behind her. Bella turned, the words dying on her lips as she found herself staring into the most penetrating grey eyes she'd ever seen. Bob Morris stood closer than she expected, tall and commanding, in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders. At 40, his dark hair was threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, and fine lines around his eyes hinted at a life lived intensely. Those eyes studied her now with unsettling focus. "I'm working," she replied, finding her voice. "The champagne is just for show." Something resembling amusement flickered across his face. "At least you're honest. A rare quality in these circles." Before Bella could respond, a clearly intoxicated man in an ill-fitting suit bumbled between them, his hand grasping Bella's arm with uncomfortable familiarity. "Well, aren't you a pretty little thing?" he slurred, spilling champagne on the floor. "How about you and I discuss some private donations?" Bella stiffened, trying to extract herself politely. "I'm here representing the Bayou Wildlife Sanctuary. Sir, if you're interested in our conservation work, I'm interested in whatever you're offering, sweetheart." The man interrupted, his grip tightening. In one fluid motion, Bob Morris stepped forward, smoothly inserting himself between them. "We believe the lady has made herself clear," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that belied his casual stance. "Perhaps you should find someone more receptive to your advances, Williamson." The drunk man blinked, recognition dawning, as he registered who had intervened. "Morris, didn't see you there. No harm meant, just being friendly." He retreated hastily, disappearing into the crowd. Bella rubbed her arm, torn between gratitude and wariness. "Thank you, Mr. Morris." "Bob," he corrected, his expression unreadable. "And you are?" Bella rose, director of the Bayou Wildlife Sanctuary. Something changed in his eyes, a flash of recognition or perhaps just interest. "The small operation outside New Orleans. You were hit hard by Eliza." Surprise registered on Bella's face. "You know about us?" "I make it my business to know about every conservation effort in Louisiana." He glanced around the glittering ballroom with subtle distaste. "This isn't the place for a real conversation. I have a private meeting room upstairs. I'd like to hear more about your sanctuary situation." Warning bells rang in Bella's mind. She'd heard rumors about powerful men like Bob Morris, how they operated, what they expected in return for their generosity. As if reading her thoughts, he added, "My assistant will accompany us, of course. This is a business discussion, nothing more." 20 minutes later, Bella found herself in a tastefully appointed meeting room, laying out the sanctuary's dire financial situation while Bob Morris listened with unnerving intensity. His assistant, a grey-haired woman with efficient movements, took notes silently in the corner. "The hurricane destroyed our visitor center and damaged the perimeter fencing," Bella explained, spreading photos across the polished table. "Without repairs, we can't reopen to the public, which means no admission fees. Meanwhile, we still have 42 animals to feed and care for, including a critically injured Florida panther that was rescued from floodwaters." Bob studied the photos, his finger tracing the outline of the damaged buildings. "You were located on the eastern edge of the bayou before Katrina. Your parents relocated after the storm." Bella froze. "How did you know about my parents?" His eyes met hers, something complicated passing through them. "As I said, I know about every conservation operation in the state. They died in Katrina," Bella said quietly. "They stayed behind to release the animals when evacuation was ordered. Their bodies weren't found for weeks." For the first time, genuine emotion crossed Bob's face. A flash of pain so raw it transformed his features. "Katrina took my family, too," he said, his voice barely audible. "My parents were working on a conservation project in the lower 9th Ward when the levees broke. The revelation hung in the air between them, an unexpected connection forged through shared tragedy." Bella saw Bob Morris differently now, not just as the cold billionaire from the society pages, but as someone who understood profound loss. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Few people do." He straightened, professionally detached once more. "Your sanctuary specializes in indigenous species rehabilitation." "Yes," Bella nodded, returning to the matter at hand. "We focus on animals native to Louisiana's wetlands, particularly those endangered by habitat loss. Right now, we're 3 days from foreclosure. Without immediate funding, we'll have to find new homes for all our animals and abandon 20 years of conservation work." Bob reached for one of the photos, a close-up of Bella kneeling beside a recovering alligator, her face alight with gentle determination. His fingers lingered on the image. "I have a proposition for you, Ms. Rose," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "One that could save your sanctuary." As he outlined his offer, Bella felt her heart race. The terms were unexpected and complex, involving not just financial support but her personal expertise on a private conservation project at his estate. When their hands accidentally brushed over one of the sanctuary photos, an electric current seemed to pass between them. Both pulled back quickly, but something had changed in the atmosphere, a charge neither could explain nor deny. In that moment, with her life's work hanging in the balance and an inexplicable connection forming with the last man she should be attracted to, Bella Rose had no idea that she was about to enter a passion-fueled storm that would challenge everything she believed about love, loyalty, and sacrifice. Chapter 2. Devil's Bargain. Rain lashed the sanctuary windows with biblical fury as Bella traced restless patterns across weathered floorboards, Bob Morris's business card heavy as forbidden fruit in her palm. His offer consumed her thoughts. Complete salvation for her sanctuary in exchange for 6 weeks of her expertise at his estate. The elegant card, embossed with gold lettering, seemed to pulse with dangerous possibility against her skin. Each tick of the ancient wall clock resonated through her body like a countdown to extinction. 24 hours remained before the bank would claim everything she loved, everything that defined her existence. "You're actually considering it?" Maya asked, concern etching her features as she sorted through the meager donations they'd collected at the gala. $5,000, nowhere near enough. Bella paused at the window, watching lightning illuminate the sanctuary grounds where injured animals huddled in temporary shelters. "What choice do I have? The bank won't extend our deadline again." But 6 weeks at his estate, alone with him. Maya shook her head. "The rumors about him are just rumors," Bella interjected, though uncertainty clouded her voice. The intensity in Bob's grey eyes when he'd made his offer had sent shivers down her spine, not entirely from fear. Besides, he's married to Diana Westbrook, who hasn't been seen with him in public for over a year, Maya pointed out. "Everyone knows it's a marriage of convenience." Thunder crashed overhead, as if punctuating Maya's warning. Bella closed her eyes, remembering the unexpected vulnerability in Bob's expression when he'd mentioned losing his parents in Katrina, the same hurricane that had claimed her own. That momentary connection had felt more genuine than anything she'd experienced in years. "If I don't accept his offer, 42 animals lose their home," Bella said finally. "And so do I." The Morris estate sprawled across 5,000 acres of pristine Louisiana wilderness, its wrought iron gates opening silently as Bella's battered pickup truck approached the following afternoon. Rain still fell in sheets, turning the elegant driveway into a muddy channel that made Bella feel even more out of place. The main house loomed ahead, a magnificent antebellum mansion restored to perfection. Smaller than she'd expected, but still imposing with its white columns and wide veranda. As Bella parked beside a row of luxury vehicles, her phone chimed with a text from Maya. "Bank confirms dollars received. Foreclosure cancelled. Whatever deal. With devil you made, it worked. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by apprehension. The deal was sealed now. 6 weeks of her life belonged to Bob Morris, but the sanctuary was safe. She was soaked by the time she reached the front door, her simple white blouse clinging to her skin and curly hair plastered to her face. A silver-haired housekeeper answered her knock, eyeing her dripping form with barely concealed disapproval. "Ms. Rose, I presume," the woman said. "Mr. Morris is expecting you in the study. Please follow me." Bella trailed behind, uncomfortably, aware of the puddles forming beneath her worn boots on the gleaming hardwood floors. The mansion's interior was tastefully decorated with a natural aesthetic. Reclaimed wood furniture, botanical prints, and what appeared to be ethically sourced tribal art, not what she'd expected from a billionaire's lair. The housekeeper knocked on a heavy oak door before opening it. "Ms. Rose has arrived, sir." Bob Morris stood with his back to the door, gazing out tall windows at the storm-lashed gardens. He'd shed the formal persona from the gala, dressed now in a simple charcoal Henley that clung to his broad shoulders, and faded jeans that somehow looked more expensive than formal wear. When he turned, his eyes widened slightly at Bella's drenched appearance. "Mrs. Ellis, please show Ms. Rose to her room so she can change," he directed the housekeeper. "Then bring her back here." 20 minutes later, Bella returned to the study wearing dry clothes from her suitcase, clean jeans, and a soft green sweater that brought out the amber flecks in her eyes. Her wild curls had begun to reassert themselves, forming a halo around her face that she'd given up trying to tame. Bob gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "I trust the arrangements with your bank were satisfactory?" "Yes," Bella replied, sinking into the chair. "The sanctuary is safe, thanks to you. But I still don't understand why you're doing this. What exactly do you expect from me?" A ghost of a smile crossed Bob's face. Direct and suspicious, good qualities in conservation work. He pushed a folder across the desk. 3 months ago, I acquired 500 acres adjacent to this property. Previously logged timberland that I intend to restore to native cypress swamp. The project has faced unexpected challenges." Bella opened the folder, finding photographs of dead saplings and soil samples. "Restoration isn't as simple as just planting trees," she said, professional interest overriding her wariness. "The soil composition has to support—" "I'm well aware," Bob interrupted, a hint of frustration coloring his tone. "I've hired the best environmental consultants money can buy. None have solved the problem. And you think I can?" Bella couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Bob leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Your sanctuary has successfully rehabilitated a section of bayou that experts claimed was beyond salvation. Your methods aren't found in textbooks, but you work. That's what I need. Practical solutions, not academic theories." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face in stark relief. For a moment, Bella glimpsed something beneath his controlled exterior. Passion, perhaps, or desperation. This project clearly meant more to him than he was letting on. "I'll show you the site tomorrow," he continued, leaning back. "Tonight, I thought we might discuss your initial impressions over dinner." The thought of a formal dinner with Bob Morris sent a flutter of nervousness through Bella's stomach. "I usually just grab something simple, as do I when I'm alone," he said. "Mrs. Ellis has prepared a meal in the kitchen, not the dining room. I dislike formality in my own home." The kitchen proved to be the heart of the house, warm and inviting, with copper pots hanging from a ceiling rack and herbs growing in window boxes. A simple meal of jambalaya waited on the central island, filling the air with spicy aromas that reminded Bella of home. "You cook?" she asked, noticing Bob's easy familiarity with the kitchen as he poured 2 glasses of wine. "When I have time," he replied, handing her a glass, "which isn't often enough. Diana prefers catered meals when she's in residence." The casual mention of his wife hung in the air between them. Bella took a sip of wine, using the moment to study him. Up close, the lines around his eyes spoke of more than just age. There was a weariness there, a solitude that resonated with her own. "She's in Europe," Bob added, answering the unspoken question. "Has been for most of the year. Our marriage is complicated." "Most marriages are," Bella replied neutrally. Though curiosity burned within her, they ate in surprisingly comfortable silence for several minutes, the storm creating a cocoon of isolation around the kitchen. When Bob finally spoke, his question caught her off guard. "The sanctuary, it was your parents' legacy. What would they think of what you've done with it?" Bella set down her fork, memories washing over her. They believed in second chances, for animals, for habitats, for people. The sanctuary was never just about preservation, it was about restoration, taking damaged things and helping them heal. She smiled sadly. "I think they'd be proud that's still our mission, even if our methods have changed. And your methods are patience, observation, working with nature instead of forcing it." Bella met his gaze directly. Nature has its own timetable for healing. Sometimes the best conservation is knowing when to step back and let it happen. Something shifted in Bob's expression, respect perhaps, or recognition. "Wise words from someone so young?" "I'm 32, Bella laughed. "Hardly a child." "I'm 40, Bob replied, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Everyone seems young to me these days." The conversation flowed more easily after that, moving from conservation philosophies to favorite wildlife encounters. Bella found herself forgetting who Bob Morris was supposed to be, the cold billionaire, the ruthless businessman, as she discovered instead a man of surprising depth and genuine passion for the natural world. As the evening progressed, the storm intensified until the lights flickered and died, plunging the kitchen into darkness. Bob calmly lit candles placed strategically around the room, their soft glow creating intimate pools of light. "The generator will kick in for essential systems," he explained, returning to his seat across from her. The candlelight softened his features, revealing a handsome face usually hardened by intensity. "But I find I prefer the quiet when the power goes out, a reminder that we're not as in control as we like to think." Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the kitchen in harsh white light. In that instant, their eyes locked, and Bella felt an unexpected jolt of connection, as if the lightning had struck something dormant within her. "Your parents," she said suddenly, needing to break the charged silence. "You said they died in Katrina too. Were they conservationists like you?" Pain flashed across Bob's face, so raw and unexpected that Bella regretted her question immediately. "Sorry," she began. "You don't have to—" "No," he interrupted softly. "It's a fair question." He stood, moving to refill their wine glasses. "My father was a petroleum engineer, trying to right the wrongs his industry had committed against the wetlands. My mother was a marine biologist. They were working in the lower Ninth Ward on a community-based restoration project when the levees failed." He returned to the table, setting her glass down carefully. "They were helping evacuate a family when their boat capsized. The father of that family was the only survivor. He told me my father gave him his life vest." Bella's heart clenched as she recognized the echoes of her own loss. "My parents stayed behind at the sanctuary to release the animals from their enclosures. They could have evacuated sooner, but they wouldn't leave until every cage was opened." Her voice caught. "Sometimes I wonder if they knew they wouldn't make it out." "They knew," Bob said with quiet certainty. "Heroes always know the risk. They make the choice anyway." Their eyes met in the candlelight, shared grief forming a bridge between their worlds. Without thinking, Bella reached across the table, placing her hand over his. The simple touch sent warmth spiraling through her, comfort mixed with something more dangerous. Bob's hand turned, his fingers intertwining with hers, strong and surprisingly gentle. For a breathless moment they remained connected, neither willing to pull away first. "We should," Bella began. Her voice hushed. Thunder crashed directly overhead, shaking the house to its foundations. They both startled, hands separating as reality reasserted itself. "I'll show you to your room," Bob said, his voice rougher than before. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As Bella followed him through the darkened hallways, candle in hand, she felt herself walking deeper into dangerous territory. The man beside her was not just her financial savior or temporary employer. He was becoming something far more complicated. With each step, she sensed herself moving toward a connection that promised both healing and heartbreak, a devil's bargain that would demand more than just her professional expertise. In the brief illumination of another lightning flash, she caught Bob watching her, his grey eyes dark with an emotion that mirrored her own conflicted desires. Whatever storm had brought them together was only beginning, and Bella couldn't shake the feeling that when it passed, neither of them would emerge unchanged. Chapter 3. Ocean Depths. 3 weeks into her stay at the Morris estate, Bella couldn't remember why she'd been so reluctant to come. Dawn painted the sky in watercolor hues as she knelt by the edge of the experimental plot, her fingers testing the soil's moisture. The native cypress saplings, once withering mysteriously, now showed promising signs of growth since she'd implemented her specialized soil treatment. "They're responding." Bob's deep voice came from behind her. He approached with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, offering one to her as he crouched beside her in the damp earth, unconcerned about his expensive clothing. "The microbiome is finally balancing," Bella explained, accepting the coffee gratefully. Their fingers brushed in the exchange, sending now familiar sparks through her system. "The problem wasn't chemical pollutants like your consultants thought. It was simpler. The soil needed to remember what it once was." "Remember?" Bob raised an eyebrow, the morning light catching the silver at his temples. Bella smiled, knowing how her methods sometimes sounded to others. "Soil has memory. In its microbial composition, its fungal networks. We didn't need to force change. We needed to remind it of its original state." During these weeks of working side by side, they developed a rhythm, professional collaboration by day that increasingly gave way to personal connection as evening approached. Bob was nothing like the cold billionaire of his reputation. In the field, he worked as hard as any of her sanctuary volunteers, his passion for restoration matching her own. "You've accomplished in 3 weeks what my team couldn't in 3 months. He said, watching a pair of herons landing gracefully among the reviving wetlands. "I knew you were the right person." The weight of his gaze made her heart flutter. Every day, the invisible barrier between them grew thinner, their shared mission forging a bond that both excited and terrified her. "We should celebrate your progress," Bob said suddenly, standing and offering his hand to help her up. "I want to show you something, my favorite place on the property." An hour later, they arrived at a hidden pearl of the estate, a pristine bayou, untouched by human development, accessible only by a narrow boat channel. Cypress trees draped with Spanish moss created a cathedral-like canopy overhead as Bob guided a small wooden boat through the still waters. "I've never brought anyone here before," he admitted, his voice hushed as if reluctant to disturb the sanctuary they'd entered. "This is where I come when the world becomes too much." Bella trailed, her fingers through the cool water, understanding completely. The secluded bayou hummed with life, birdsong, the gentle splash of fish jumping, the rustle of creatures moving through the underbrush along the shore. "It's perfection," she whispered. Bob guided the boat toward a small island at the bayou's center, where a wooden platform nestled among ancient cypress trees. As they stepped from the boat, Bella gasped at the view, the water reflecting sky and trees in a mirror image that made it impossible to tell where one world ended and another began. "I had this built after my parents died," Bob explained, his shoulder brushing against hers as they stood at the platform's edge. When I'm here, it feels like the boundary between worlds thins, like they might still exist somewhere, just beyond what I can see." The vulnerability in his voice undid something in Bella's chest. For 3 weeks, they'd been circling each other, maintaining professional distance despite the undeniable current between them. Now, in this sacred space, pretenses seemed impossible to maintain. "I understand," she said softly. "After I lost my parents, I used to sit for hours in the aviary at the sanctuary, listening to the birds. Something about their songs made me feel like my parents could hear them too, wherever they were." Bob turned to her, grey eyes searching, her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "You're the first person who's ever really understood." The confession hung between them, weighted with meaning. Bella knew they stood at a precipice. One step more, and they would fall into something neither could easily escape. "Bob," she began, uncertainty in her voice, "your wife has been living in Europe with her lover for the past year," he finished, his jaw tightening. "Our marriage exists on paper only, a business arrangement that's run its course." "Then why stay married?" Pain flickered across his face. "Complicated legal entanglements, conservation easements that would be jeopardized by divorce. At least that was my excuse." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "The truth is, I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for myself, until I met you." Bella's heart thundered in her chest. The attraction between them had been building day by day, in shared laughter over meals, in the brush of hands passing tools, in long conversations beneath the stars on the veranda. She'd tried to attribute it to their shared passion for conservation, their common loss, anything but what it truly was, a soul-deep recognition that terrified and thrilled her. "This is complicated," she whispered, even as she moved imperceptibly closer. "Life is complicated," Bob replied, his hand rising to cup her cheek with a tenderness that made her tremble. "This, what's between us, might be the only simple truth. I've known in years." The first touch of his lips against hers was gentle, questioning. When she responded, slipping her arms around his neck and pressing closer, the kiss transformed into something primal and consuming. Years of loneliness and guarded emotions shattered as they clung to each other on that island sanctuary, the world beyond disappearing entirely. Bob's hands tangled in her wild curls as he deepened the kiss, a groan escaping him that vibrated through her core. "Bella," he whispered against her lips, her name a prayer and plea combined. They sank to their knees on the soft blanket he'd brought, hands exploring with reverent urgency. Each layer removed was another barrier dissolved between them, not just physical garments, but the walls they'd built around their hearts since losing their parents. Under the dappled sunlight filtering through ancient cypress trees, they came together in a union that transcended physical desire. Every touch, every whispered endearment felt like coming home to a place neither had known existed. As they moved together, the boundaries between them blurred like the reflection of sky meeting water. Impossible to determine where one ended and the other began. Afterward, wrapped in Bob's arms as afternoon light gilded their skin, Bella felt peace she hadn't known since childhood. His fingers traced patterns on her bare shoulder, his heartbeat strong and steady beneath her cheek. "I've been half alive," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion as he traced the curve of her cheek. "Everything before you, success, wealth, status, was just elaborate distraction from emptiness. Today, for the first time since I lost my parents, I feel completely alive." His raw vulnerability should have terrified her, this confession of need from a man the world believed needed nothing. Instead, his words resonated in the chambers of her heart like an echo she'd been waiting lifetime to hear. "What happens now?" Bella asked, her fingers mapping the strong planes of his face, memorizing him through touch. "I end my marriage," Bob replied without hesitation, his grey eyes clear with certainty. "I should have done it the moment it became a business arrangement. rather than a union of hearts. Hope unfurled within her chest like a night-blooming flower, beautiful but cautious in its opening. The conservation lands, the easements tied to your marriage. Damn the legal complications, he whispered fiercely against her lips. We'll fight whatever battles come. What we've found here isn't just passion, Bella, it's resurrection. They spent the remainder of the day in their private paradise, alternating between passionate love-making and deep conversation, mapping each other's bodies and souls with equal dedication. As the sun began its descent, turning the bayou to burnished gold, neither wanted to return to the world waiting beyond their sanctuary. "Stay with me tonight," Bob murmured against her neck as they reluctantly dressed. "Not as my consultant, as the woman I'm falling in love with." That night in his bedroom, their lovemaking took on a new dimension, unhurried exploration, giving way to urgent need as they discovered how perfectly they fit together. Bella surrendered completely to the sensations he awakened in her, her body arching beneath his as they found release together, his name a cry on her lips. In the peaceful aftermath, Bob held her close, his breath warm against her hair. "I never believed in fate," he whispered. "But something brought you to me," Bella rose. "Something bigger than both of us." She smiled in the darkness, pressing a kiss to his chest above his heart. "Maybe our parents had something to do with it, looking out for us still." They drifted to sleep entwined, the connection between them deepening with each shared breath. Neither heard the distant sound of tires on gravel, announcing an unexpected arrival at the main house. Neither suspected that their newfound paradise was about to be shattered by the appearance of Eleanor Morris, returning from Europe with news that would tear their world apart. Chapter 4. Broken Tides. Morning sunlight streamed through the master bedroom windows as Bella stirred in Bob's arms, their bodies still entangled from a night of passionate discoveries. She traced the contours of his face, relaxed in sleep in a way it never was when awake, memorizing every line and plane. Last night had changed everything, opening doors within her heart she'd long kept locked. "I could get used to waking up." "And to this view," Bob murmured, eyes still closed, a smile curving his lips. "Careful, I might hold you to that," Bella teased, pressing a soft kiss to his chest. His arms tightened around her, grey eyes opening to regard her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm counting on it." The bubble of perfect contentment burst with 3 sharp knocks on the bedroom door. Mrs. Ellis's voice came through, uncharacteristically strained. "Mr. Morris, you're needed downstairs immediately. Mrs. Morris has arrived." Bella froze, her blood turning to ice as Bob tensed beneath her. For a heartbeat neither moved, the idyllic morning shattered by those simple words. "Tell her I'll be down in 15 minutes, Bob called, his voice steady, despite the shock evident in his eyes. When the housekeeper's footsteps faded, he pressed his forehead to Bella's. "Eleanor wasn't supposed to return for another month. I'm sorry, this isn't how I wanted—" "I should go," Bella interrupted, pulling away and gathering the clothes scattered across the floor, shame and confusion battling within her. Despite Bob's assurances about his marriage being over, the reality of being the other woman hit with crushing force. Bob caught her wrist gently. "No, don't hide, Bella. What we have is real. I won't pretend otherwise, even to Eleanor." "It's not that simple," she whispered, tears threatening. "You're still married, Bob, and I just—" Her voice broke. "Look at me," he urged, tilting her chin up. "Nothing changes what happened between us. Nothing changes what I feel for you. Let me handle Eleanor, then we'll talk. I promise." 20 minutes later, Bella sat in her guest room, dressed in simple jeans and a blouse, her still damp hair from a hasty shower curling wildly around her face. Through the partially open window, voices drifted up from the garden terrace below, Bob's deep timbre and a woman's cultured accent, their conversation growing increasingly heated. "Pregnant!" Bob's voice, incredulous and sharp. "That's impossible, Eleanor. We haven't been together in over a year." "Miracles happen, darling," Eleanor's voice replied, smooth as silk despite the obvious lie. "Perhaps during your visit to Paris last fall?" "Cut the act," Bob growled. "If you're pregnant, we both know it's not mine. Is it Alexander's?" The slap that followed was audible even from Bella's window. She flinched, torn between the urge to flee the estate entirely and the need to stand by the man who'd awakened her. "Art, how dare you!" Eleanor hissed, voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "After all my family has done for you, the connections, the land acquisitions, without me, your precious conservation empire would be half its size." "I never asked for your family's help," Bob replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "Everything I've built, I've earned. The only thing your family name ever bought was respectability for yours after your father's scandal." Another tense silence followed. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice had transformed from injured spouse to calculating adversary. "I want half of everything, Robert. Half the estate, half the business holdings, half of your precious conservation lands. Fight me, and I'll ensure every acre is sold for development the moment the divorce is finalized." Bella's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. The conservation lands, thousands of acres of pristine habitat, home to countless endangered species, couldn't fall into development hands. Everything Bob had worked for, everything he believed in, would be destroyed. "And your little sanctuary pet upstairs," Eleanor continued, venom dripping from every word. "I'll make sure her reputation is ruined so thoroughly she'll never work in conservation again. Wildlife rehabilitation requires licenses, doesn't it? Such fragile things, professional credentials." Footsteps sounded on gravel, then the slam of a car door. Bella sat frozen, her world collapsing around her. Loving Bob wasn't supposed to destroy both their lives. How had something so beautiful turned so ugly so quickly? A soft knock pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. "Bella?" Bob's voice strained with emotion. "May I come in?" She opened the door, heart breaking at the sight of him, shoulders slumped with the weight of impossible choices, eyes haunted with pain. "You heard," he stated, rather than asked. "Enough," she admitted, stepping back to let him enter. He paced, the small room like a caged animal, running hands through his disheveled hair. Everything she said was a lie. The pregnancy, her contributions to my work, all fabrications designed to hurt us both. "But her threats weren't lies," Bella said quietly. "She can do exactly what she promised, can't she? Destroy your conservation work, ruin my career." Bob stopped pacing, shoulders sagging in defeat. "The conservation easements are structured through her family's trust. A legal framework I agreed to when we married, never imagining she would weaponize it." The realization of what this meant settled over Bella like a shroud. "You have to stay with her." "No," he said fiercely, crossing to take her hands. "I won't lose you. We'll fight this. My lawyers will take years to untangle it," Bella finished for him. "Meanwhile, developers will be circling the lands you've protected. All those habitats, all those animals, they don't have years, Bob." Tears spilled down her cheeks as she forced herself to say the words breaking her heart. "And my sister doesn't have years either." Bob stilled. "Your sister?" Bella hadn't told him about Jasmine's leukemia. The real reason she'd been so desperate to save the sanctuary, its modest income helped pay for treatments insurance wouldn't cover. "She's 17, Bella whispered. "Diagnosed 3 years ago. The sanctuary helps fund her care. If I lose my credentials, if I can't work..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Bob gathered her into his arms, holding her as if he could protect her from the impossible choice they faced. I'll make sure your sister gets the best care, regardless of what happens between us, he promised, voice rough with emotion. And I'm supposed to thank Eleanor for that arrangement. Bitter laughter escaped Bella's lips. For your charity while you live with her, pretending to accept her lies, while I go back to the sanctuary alone knowing exactly what I've lost. Tell me what to do, Bob pleaded, cupping her face. Tell me how to fix this without losing you. The anguish in his eyes nearly undid her resolve. But Bella had spent her life making hard choices for those who depended on her. This was just one more sacrifice. You know what has to happen, she said softly. Those lands can't be developed. My sister can't lose her care. And we... Her voice broke. We can't be together, not now. I can't accept that, Bob whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. Last night meant everything to me. You mean everything. Which is why we both have to walk away, Bella replied, summoning strength from some hidden reserve, to protect what matters most. Their final kiss tasted of salt and sorrow, a desperate farewell filled with all they'd discovered together and all they were being forced to surrender. Bob's hands trembled as they traced her face, committing every detail to memory. This isn't over, he vowed, voice thick with emotion. I'll find a way back to you. 3 hours later, Bella's truck bounced down the long driveway of the Morris estate for the last time, wipers fighting a losing battle against the sudden downpour that matched her tears. In the rearview mirror, she could see Bob standing in the rain, a solitary figure growing smaller with each turn of her wheels. She drove straight to the hospital where her sister received treatments, needing to remind herself why this sacrifice was necessary. Finding Jasmine's room empty sent panic coursing through her until a nurse explained she'd been moved to a private suite on the top floor, all expenses covered by an anonymous donor. The note on Jasmine's new bedside table held just 5 words in a now familiar handwriting. Some promises can't be broken. That night, as news alerts flooded her phone about Robert Morris and his wife Eleanor reconciling after her announcement of their expected child, Bella curled around her pain in her small apartment above the sanctuary office. The soft calls of the animals below offered little comfort as she finally surrendered to gut-wrenching sobs. She had saved the sanctuary. Her sister would receive the best care possible. The conservation lands would remain protected, but in the process, she had lost the only man who had ever truly seen her, who had awakened passions and dreams she never knew she possessed. In the dark hours before dawn, as rain lashed against her windows, Bella wondered if the price of doing the right thing would always be the shattering of her own heart. Chapter 5. Wilderness of Solitude. 6 months of separation carved hollows beneath Bella's eyes that matched the emptiness in her heart. By day, she channeled her pain into the sanctuary's rebirth, rebuilding storm-damaged habitats and expanding rehabilitation facilities with the mysterious funds that appeared each month. She'd returned the first transfer with a note saying simply, "Please don't." But the money continued flowing through untraceable channels, always precisely calibrated to their most urgent needs. Each deposit was an unspoken message. I still see you, I still care, I haven't forgotten. Eleanor's media campaign proved relentless. Expertly staged pregnancy photo shoots, strategic public appearances on Bob's arm, manufactured stories of their renewed devotion leaking to sympathetic journalists. Society pages celebrated the power couple's recommitment to their marriage and future family with nauseating regularity. Yet the photographs told a different story for those who knew where to look. The man who had awakened beneath Bella with such passionate joy now moved through the world like a hollow shell. His designer suits hung slightly loose on his frame, and though he smiled for cameras with practiced ease, his eyes remained lifeless, grey storms frozen into dull slate. "You're torturing yourself," Maya said one evening, snatching Bella's phone as she scrolled through yet another society page featuring the Morris couple. "It's been 6 months. You need to move on." Bella said nothing, focusing instead on the injured hawk they were rehabilitating. Moving on wasn't an option when every beat of her heart still echoed his name. "At least come to town tonight," Maya pleaded. "The volunteer appreciation dinner. Remember, you're supposed to give a speech." The thought of socializing made Bella's chest tighten, but her staff and volunteers deserved recognition. She nodded reluctantly. "I'll be there." Later that evening, dressed in a simple blue dress that brought out the amber in her eyes, Bella stood before the small gathering in the community center, thanking people for their dedication to the sanctuary. Halfway through her speech, the back door opened. Bob stood there, more gaunt than she remembered, silver now prominent in his dark hair. Their eyes locked across the room, and the world fell away, 6 months of separation, collapsing into nothing. Somehow, she finished her remarks. Somehow, she made it through the endless minutes of small talk as people approached to congratulate. The sanctuary's revival. And somehow, she found herself alone with him in the empty kitchen, her heart thundering against her ribs. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, though everything in her cried out for his touch. "I had to see you." His voice was rough with emotion. "Eleanor is in Switzerland. The doctors there confirmed what I already knew. There is no baby. There never was." Hope flared painfully in Bella's chest before reality extinguished it. "It doesn't change anything. The conservation lands—" "I've found a way," Bob interrupted, stepping closer. "A legal loophole in the trust structure. My lawyers are preparing the documents, but it will take time." His hand reached for hers, hesitating inches away. "I just needed you to know I haven't given up, that everything I've done these past months has been to find my way back to you." The magnetism between them was overwhelming, like gravity itself pulled them toward each other. When his fingers finally brushed hers, Bella felt the touch throughout her entire body. "I've missed you," she admitted, voice breaking. "Every day, every night." His eyes darkened with hunger and longing. "Tell me to go, and I will. Tell me there's no hope for us, and I'll never disturb your peace again." Instead of answering, Bella closed the distance between them, her lips finding his with desperate need. Their kiss ignited instantly, months of longing exploding into consuming passion. His hands tangled in her curls as he pressed her against the counter, her body arching into his touch as if starved for it. "Not here," she gasped as his lips traced fire down her neck. They barely made it to her truck, driving in charged silence to her small cabin deep in the sanctuary grounds. The moment the door closed behind them, they fell upon each other like starving creatures, clothes discarded in desperate haste. "I've dreamed of this every night," Bob confessed against her skin as they tumbled onto her bed. "Of you, of us." There. Reunion was raw and primal, acclaiming, a reaffirmation that whatever stood between them, this connection remained unbreakable. Bella surrendered completely to the sensations only he could evoke, her cries of pleasure echoing through the cabin as he worshipped every inch of her body. Later, wrapped in tangled sheets and each other's arms, reality began its unwelcome return. "How long do we have?" she asked, tracing the new lines worry had etched around his eyes. "Eleanor returns tomorrow night," he said, pressing a kiss to her palm. "The legal process will take another month if everything goes as planned. And if it doesn't," he held her gaze steadily, "then I walk away from everything, the company, the estate, all of it. I've lived without you for 6 months, Bella. I won't do it for another day, once Eleanor's threats are neutralized." She pressed her face against his chest, inhaling his scent, committing it to memory. "I'm afraid to hope again." "Then let me hope for both of us," he murmured into her hair. "1 month, that's all I'm asking you to wait." Their goodbye at dawn was laden with promises and renewed passion, his last kiss lingering on her lips long after his car disappeared down the sanctuary road. For the first time in months, Bella felt something like peace as she returned to her duties. 3 days later, that fragile peace shattered when her phone rang at midnight. Bob's private number, flashing on the screen. "There's been an accident," he said without preamble, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Eleanor discovered everything, the legal preparations, the trust restructuring. She was hysterical, threatening to go to the press about us. When I tried to leave, she drove her car into mine at the estate gates." Bella's blood ran cold. "Is she injured? Not critically, but she's telling everyone I tried to kill her." His voice dropped lower. "She's destroyed the legal documents, Bella, and she's filing a restraining order." The implications crashed over Bella like a tidal wave. No legal loophole, no clean escape, just more months, perhaps years, of painful separation. "What do we do now?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The silence that followed held the weight of impossible decisions. "I don't know," he finally admitted, "but I won't give up on us, no matter what Eleanor does, no matter how long it takes." After they hung up, Bella stood on her porch, staring up at the same stars that had witnessed their lovemaking in the hidden bayou that seemed a lifetime ago. The night held no answers, only the chorus of wildlife sounds that had once brought her comfort, but now served as a reminder of all hanging in the balance. As September gave way to October, hurricane season returned to Louisiana. Forecasters warned of a major storm approaching, not as devastating as Katrina or Eliza, but enough to trigger evacuation orders for coastal areas. The sanctuary, set on higher ground, became a refuge for staff from other wildlife centers in the storm's path. Preparations consumed Bella, temporarily pushing thoughts of Bob to the background as she focused on protecting the animals and facilities. The night before the hurricane's landfall, as wind began to whip through the trees, a volunteer burst into the main building. "Someone's at the gate," he shouted over the growing howl of the storm. "Says he needs to speak with you immediately." Lightning illuminated the sanctuary grounds as Bella made her way to the entrance, rain soaking her instantly despite the heavy jacket. Through the downpour, she recognized the silhouette instantly. Bob, drenched and wild-eyed, his car mud-splattered behind him. "What are you doing here?" she cried as she unlocked the gate. "There's a hurricane coming." Eleanor confessed everything, he shouted over the wind, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. "The fake pregnancy, the accident, all of it. It's over, Bella. I'm free." Before she could process his words, a deafening crack split the air. They both looked up in time to see the massive oak beside the gate swaying dangerously, its roots lifting from the saturated ground. "Look out!" Bob lunged forward, shoving Bella clear, as the ancient tree came crashing down. Through the curtain of rain, she saw it happen as if in slow motion, the massive trunk striking where she had stood a second before, catching Bob's leg beneath its enormous weight. His scream of pain cut through the storm's fury as Bella scrambled toward him, heart frozen with terror. Blood already pooled beneath him, mixing with rain and mud as he fought to remain conscious. "Help!" she screamed toward the main building, already pulling her jacket off to wrap around his injured leg. "Somebody help us!" As sanctuary staff rushed toward them with flashlights bobbing in the darkness, Bella cradled Bob's head in her lap, her tears indistinguishable from the rain streaming down her face. "Stay with me," she pleaded, pressing desperate kisses to his forehead. "Stay with me, Bob. Please." His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face with effort. "Always knew I'd fall for you," he managed, a ghost of his smile appearing despite the pain. In that moment, as lightning illuminated his beloved face and thunder shook the ground beneath them, Bella realized that some forces were beyond human control, hurricanes, falling trees, and the kind of love that defied every obstacle placed in its path. They had survived 6 months apart. They would survive this too, whatever it took. As rescue workers arrived to lift the crushing weight from Bob's body, Bella made a silent vow to the storm-lashed sky. This time, nothing and no one would tear them apart again. Chapter 6. Whispers of Truth. Sterile white walls pressed against Bella's consciousness as she paced the surgical waiting room, each tick of the clock expanding to fill eternity. 3 agonizing hours had passed since they'd rushed Bob into emergency surgery. His leg shattered beneath the fallen oak, internal bleeding threatening the life that had just returned to hers. Outside, the hurricane's fury matched her internal tempest, hospital lights flickering as nature tested human defenses. Family only beyond this point, a stern-faced nurse had insisted when they'd arrived, physically blocking Bella from the trauma room. Bob, despite pain that had him sheet-white and trembling, had raised himself on the gurney with startling strength. "She is my family," he'd growled with such fierce conviction that the nurse stepped back. His fingers had intertwined with Bella's, his eyes conveying what words couldn't, before medication dragged him under. "Come back to me. I've only just found you again." Now she paced the empty waiting room, prayers tumbling from her lips. The doors swung open, and Bella's heart stuttered. Not the doctor she hoped for, but Eleanor Morris, immaculate despite the storm, her cold eyes assessing Bella with calculated precision. "So it's true," Eleanor said, voice dripping disdain. "He ran straight to you the moment my back was turned." Bella straightened, too exhausted for pretense. "He came to tell me you'd confessed your lies, that it was over." "Nothing is over until I say it is." Eleanor's perfectly manicured finger jabbed the air. "That man is my husband, and I won't let some Bayou charity case take what's mine." Something snapped in Bella. Months of heartache, of sacrifice, of watching the man she loved suffer under this woman's manipulation. "He was never yours," she said, voice dangerously quiet. "Not his heart, not his soul. You had a business arrangement. Nothing more." Eleanor's laugh was brittle. "And you think you know him after what, a few weeks together? A tumble in the sheets. I've been married to Robert for 7 years. Yet you know nothing about him," Bella countered. "Not what he dreams of, not what wakes him in the night, not what he lost when Katrina took his parents." Something flickered in Eleanor's expression. Surprise, perhaps, that this woman knew things about her husband she'd never bothered to learn. "You're right," a deep voice interrupted from the doorway. Neither woman had noticed Alexander Parker's arrival, Eleanor's supposed European lover, Bob's childhood friend and business partner. "Alex," Eleanor hissed, "what are you doing here?" "Witnessing the inevitable," he replied, moving into the room. His eyes settled on Bella with unexpected gentleness. "You must be Bella Rose. Bob's spoken of you often." Confusion clouded Bella's exhausted mind. "You've spoken with Bob recently?" Alexander nodded. "For months, ever since Eleanor's accident. I'm the one who convinced her to confess." Eleanor's face contorted with fury. "You betrayed me." "No, Eleanor, you betrayed yourself," he said sadly. "And Bob, and the conservation mission you once actually believed in." The revelation that Eleanor had once cared about conservation work startled Bella almost as much as Alexander's apparent alliance with Bob. "Why would you help him?" she asked Alexander. "I thought you and Eleanor were lovers?" He shook his head. "Another of Eleanor's fabrications. I've been helping Bob document her systematic embezzlement from the Conservation Trust, the real reason she's fought so hard against divorce." Eleanor's face paled. "That's a lie. We have the offshore accounts, the false conservation projects, all of it," Alexander continued calmly. "The only reason charges haven't been filed is Bob's concern for your father's health. He doesn't want to kill the old man with the scandal. The surgical doors swung open before Eleanor could respond, a weary doctor approaching them. "Robert Morris's family?" "I'm his wife." Eleanor stepped forward automatically. "And I'm the woman he loves," Bella countered, moving alongside her. The doctor looked between them, too exhausted for drama. "Mr. Morris is stable. We've repaired the vascular damage and set the compound fractures. He's asking for someone named Bella." Eleanor's intake of breath was sharp with humiliation. Alexander placed a gentle hand on her arm. "It's time to let go, Eleanor, for everyone's sake." Something shifted in Eleanor's perfect facade, a crack in the ice, revealing unexpected vulnerability. "He really loves her, doesn't he?" she whispered. "Yes," Alexander answered simply. "He does." Eleanor squared her shoulders, that moment of humanity vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. "This isn't over. My lawyers will advise you to take the settlement Bob offered," Alexander interrupted, "before the embezzlement charges become public. It's generous, Eleanor, enough to start fresh somewhere. Don't throw it away out of pride." For a moment the three stood in tense silence, the storm outside a fitting backdrop to the emotional tempest within. Then, without another word, Eleanor turned and walked away, her heels clicking a diminishing rhythm down the corridor. "Go to him," Alexander said to Bella. "He's been fighting for this moment for months." Tears blurred Bella's vision as she was led to Bob's room. He lay pale against the white sheets, tubes and monitors surrounding him, but his eyes lit up when she entered. "You're still here," he whispered, voice rough from intubation. "Always," she promised, carefully taking his hand between both of hers, mindful of the IV. "Alexander told me everything, how you've been working together, the evidence against Eleanor." Bob's fingers tightened weakly around hers. "I wanted to tell you, but it wasn't safe. If Eleanor had suspected Alexander was helping me—" "Shh," Bella soothed, pressing her lips to his knuckles. "Save your strength." "No more waiting," he insisted, struggling to stay alert against the pull of medication. "No more separation. The storm's over, Bella, for all of us." As if contradicting his words, thunder boomed outside, rattling the windows. But Bella understood. The storm that had kept them apart was finally breaking. "Eleanor?" he asked, tension evident even through his drugged state. "Gone," Bella assured him. "Alexander is handling everything." Relief softened his features as the medication finally overcame his resistance. "Stay with me," he murmured, as his eyes drifted closed. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised, settling into the chair beside his bed for the long night ahead. Dawn broke clear and brilliant, the hurricane having passed during the night, leaving downed trees and flooded streets in its wake. Bella awoke to find Bob watching her, his eyes clearer, his color improved. "Has anyone told you how beautiful you are when you sleep?" he asked, his voice stronger. "Flattery will get you everywhere, Mr. Morris," she teased, leaning over to kiss him softly. Their tender moment was interrupted by Alexander's arrival, bringing coffee and legal documents. "The decree is ready," he announced. "Eleanor signed everything this morning. Divorce papers, conservation trust amendments, all of it. She's already left for the airport." Bob's eyes never left Bella's face. "And the embezzlement charges?" "Dropped, as you requested," Alexander confirmed. "Though I still think you're being too generous." "Some things matter more than justice," Bob replied quietly. "The conservation lands are protected now. That's what counts." When Alexander departed, promising to handle the press inquiries already pouring in about Bob's accident, they were finally alone with the reality of their newfound freedom. "What happens now?" Bella asked, almost afraid to believe the obstacles were truly gone. Bob shifted in the hospital bed, wincing slightly. "First, I recover. Then we rebuild. Your sanctuary, my conservation projects, our life together." "Our life," she repeated, testing the words that had seemed impossible just days ago. If you'll have me, he amended, sudden vulnerability in his eyes. I know I've brought chaos into your ordered world, Bella Rose. I wouldn't blame you if... She silenced him with a kiss, pouring months of longing and love into the connection. My world was never ordered, she whispered against his lips, just empty until you filled it. 3 weeks later, Bob was released from the hospital, his leg still encased in a complicated brace, but healing well. By mutual agreement, he moved into Bella's cabin at the sanctuary, rather than returning to the estate with its painful memories. The simplicity of their new living arrangement, his expensive suits hanging beside her worn jeans, his gourmet coffee maker sharing counter space with her chipped sanctuary mugs, brought a domestic intimacy neither had experienced before. Each night they fell asleep entwined. Each morning they woke to the sounds of wildlife stirring beyond their windows. I never thought I could be this happy, Bob confessed one evening as they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sanctuary in golden hues. His arm curved protectively around her shoulders, his injured leg propped carefully on a stool. Even with a shattered leg and a reputation the tabloids are having a field day with, Bella teased, snuggling closer against the autumn chill. Especially then, he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Because I have you. Later that night, as moonlight spilled across their bed, their lovemaking took on a new dimension. Unhurried exploration replacing desperate need, secure in the knowledge that what they'd found could no longer be torn apart by outside forces. I love you, Bob whispered as Bella moved above him, careful of his injured leg, her body arching with pleasure. Every part of you, every day, every moment. Show me, she breathed, surrendering to the sensations only he could create within her. Hours later, satisfied and drowsy in each other's arms, Bella traced patterns on his chest. I've been meaning to tell you something. Bob caught her wondering, and bringing it to his lips. That sounds serious. Jasmine's doctors called yesterday, she said, referring to her sister. Her latest tests show no trace of cancer. They're calling it a complete remission. Joy lit Bob's face as he pulled her closer. That's wonderful news. It's because of you, Bella said softly. The treatments you arranged, the specialists, it's because she's a fighter, he corrected gently, like her sister. Bella settled her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Outside, an owl called into the night answered by the distant howl of a coyote, wild voices conversing in ancient tongues. Within their cabin, wrapped in each other's warmth, two souls who had weathered separation and scandal, threats and injury, found something neither had dared hope for after their respective losses, a home in each other's arms. What are you thinking? About, Bob asked, fingers stroking through her wild curls. The night we met, Bella replied. How I nearly didn't go to that gala. The universe would have found another way to bring us together, he said with quiet certainty. Some things are simply meant to be. As they drifted towards sleep, neither could have predicted that their newfound peace would soon face its greatest challenge yet, one that would test not only their love, but everything they believed about their shared past. Chapter 7. Southern Healing. 2 months after Eleanor's departure, life at the sanctuary had fallen into a peaceful rhythm. Bob's leg healed steadily, the metal brace replaced with a less cumbersome walking boot. Though he maintained offices in New Orleans, he conducted most business from Bella's cabin, converting a small sunroom into a workspace where conservation plans and sanctuary expansions took equal priority. What do you think about this location for the new rehabilitation center? Bella asked, one crisp December morning, spreading blueprints across the kitchen table. The sanctuary had flourished under their combined vision, Bob's resources matching Bella's practical experience. Perfect, he agreed, pulling her into his lap despite her playful protest. Though I'm more interested in the view right here. Their kiss deepened immediately, hands wandering with practiced familiarity that had yet to dim the electricity between them. Bella melted against him, still amazed at how quickly passion ignited whenever they touched. We'll never get any work. Done this way, she murmured against his lips, even as her fingers began unbuttoning his shirt. I can live with that, Bob replied, his voice husky as he lifted her onto the table, blueprints scattering forgotten to the floor. Later, breathless and laughing as they retrieved the plans from under furniture, Bella's phone rang with a call from Jasmine. She's coming home for Christmas, Bella announced after the conversation, joy illuminating her face. The doctors have cleared her for travel. 3 whole weeks. Bob wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her neck. We should celebrate properly. Invite your brother too. A family Christmas. The word family lingered between them, weighted with meaning. Though they'd never discussed their future explicitly, both sensed the permanence of what they'd built. Together. I'd like that, Bella said softly, leaning into his embrace. Their domestic happiness was interrupted that afternoon by Alexander's unexpected arrival at the sanctuary. His expression as he climbed from his luxury SUV sent warning signals through Bella. We have a problem, he announced without preamble when they met him at the gate. Richard Dawson is back in Louisiana. Bob stiffened beside her. Who's Richard? Dawson? Bella asked, noting how the color had drained from Bob's face. The man who survived the boat accident that killed my parents during Katrina, Bob explained, his voice tight. He disappeared years ago after testifying about their deaths. Alexander handed over a manila envelope. He's written a book about Katrina survivors. Advanced copies are circulating to publishers. He devotes an entire chapter to your parents, Bob. Tension radiated from Bob as he scanned the manuscript pages. This contradicts his original testimony. He now claims my father deliberately capsized the boat when it became clear they couldn't save everyone, sacrificing himself and my mother to save Dawson and his child. That's absurd, Bella exclaimed. Who would believe that? It gets worse, Alexander said grimly. He names your parents too, Bella. Claims they were negligent in releasing dangerous predators during evacuation, resulting in attacks on survivors. He's painting them as reckless environmental extremists. Bella snatched the pages, scanning the text with growing horror. These are lies. They carefully planned which animals could be safely released. The dangerous ones were transported. Bob's arm steadied her as fury and grief threatened to overwhelm her. Why now, she demanded, after all these years? Money, Alexander replied simply. The 20th anniversary of Katrina is approaching. His agent is pitching this as the untold story of the disaster. That evening, after Alexander departed, with promises to contact their legal team, Bella found Bob standing motionless on the porch, staring into the darkness. The manuscript lay discarded on the railing. We'll fight this, she said, wrapping her arms around his waist. We have records from the sanctuary, logs of which animals were released, which were transported. We can disprove his claims. It's not just about disproving him, Bob replied, his voice hollow. It's about protecting their legacies. Everything. I've built everything you've preserved. It all honors what they died for. I won't let him twist their sacrifice into something shameful. Bella pressed her cheek against his back, feeling the tension in his muscles. Then we'll fight together. My parents and yours connected even in this. He turned, gathering her close. I never told you how much it meant. Finding someone who understood that specific loss, someone who carries the same weight of responsibility toward what our parents left behind. Their lovemaking that night held a desperate edge, each seeking comfort in the other's embrace, affirming the connection that had brought them together. Bob's hands traced her body with reverent intensity, as if memorizing every curve, every response. I need you, he whispered against her heated skin. "Not just tonight, always." Bella answered with her body, taking him deeper, holding him closer until they both shattered, clinging to each other in the aftermath, as if the world beyond. Their bed might try to tear them apart once more. The following week brought unexpected complications. Jasmine arrived early for her Christmas visit, bringing news that a reporter had contacted her at college, asking invasive questions about their parents and the sanctuary's history. "I told him to leave me alone," Jasmine reported, her delicate features, so like Bella's but with lingering fragility from her illness, creased with worry. "But he mentioned Richard Dawson's book as if it were gospel truth." Bella exchanged concerned glances with Bob. The situation was escalating faster than they'd anticipated. "We need to get ahead of this," Bob decided, making calls that brought Alexander and a public relations specialist to the sanctuary the next day. "Two options," the PR expert explained during their strategy session. "Either ignore Dawson completely and risk the story gaining traction, or confront it head-on with your own narrative." "We fight," Bob and Bella said in unison, their hands linking automatically beneath the table. The week before Christmas transformed into a flurry of activity: legal depositions, archival searches, and interviews with survivors who remembered both families' efforts during Katrina. Amidst the chaos, Bella's brother Marcus arrived from California, bringing warmth and his characteristic optimism to the increasingly tense atmosphere. "Look what I found in Dad's old storage locker," he announced on Christmas Eve, presenting Bella with a waterproof case containing old DV tapes, his video logs from the sanctuary, including Katrina preparations. The discovery electrified their legal team. The tapes provided irrefutable evidence of the careful evacuation protocols, directly contradicting Dawson's claims about recklessly released predators. More importantly, one tape included footage of Bella's father receiving a satellite phone call about the Morris family's rescue efforts in the lower Ninth Ward. "This proves the connection between our families," Bella realized as they reviewed the footage together on Christmas morning. "Dad mentions your parents by name, praises their rescue coordination." Bob watched the grainy footage with glistening eyes, hearing Bella's father speak of his parents with professional respect. "This changes everything," he said quietly. By New Year's Eve, the tide had turned dramatically. Confronted with the video evidence and statements from multiple witnesses, Dawson's publisher dropped the book project. When financial investigations revealed Dawson had accepted payments from a developer with interests in Bob's conservation lands, his credibility collapsed completely. The victory celebration at the sanctuary brought together their growing circle: Jasmine and Marcus, Alexander and Maya, volunteers and staff who had stood by them through the crisis. Under a canopy of stars, with bonfires warding off the winter chill, Bob drew Bella away from the festivities to a quiet spot overlooking the bayou. "These past months have shown me what matters," he said, his voice soft but certain as he took her hands in his. "Not the business, not the properties, just this, us, the life we're building." Bella's heart quickened as he dropped to one knee, balancing carefully with his healing leg. "Bella Rose, whose passion matches my own, whose courage humbles me daily," he continued, producing a ring unlike any she'd seen, a delicate band of reclaimed gold, supporting not a diamond, but a small piece of amber with a preserved cypress leaf suspended within. "Will you marry me? Create a legacy with me that would make our parents proud?" Tears blurred her vision as she pulled him to his feet, unwilling to let him strain his healing leg. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss sealed the promise as fireworks exploded overhead, marking not just the new year, but the beginning of their shared future. Later, wrapped in blankets beside the dying bonfire after guests had departed, they made love under the winter stars, a passionate affirmation of all they'd overcome and all that lay ahead. "I never believed I could find this," Bob confessed afterward, holding her close against the December chill. Someone who understands both my past and my vision for the future. Bella traced the strong lines of his face, memorizing him in the firelight. We were always moving toward each other, she said, even when we didn't know it. As they drifted to sleep in each other's arms, the sounds of the sanctuary surrounded them, nocturnal creatures calling into the night, the subtle movement of water in the nearby bayou, the whisper of wind through cypress trees. Nature's reminder that some bonds once formed could weather any storm. Neither suspected that the greatest test of their love still awaited, a revelation about their shared past that would shake the very foundation upon which they'd built their future. Chapter 8. Betrayed. Trust. Spring transformed the sanctuary into a renaissance of color and life, mirroring the renewal Bella and Bob had found in each other's arms. Their May wedding would take place beneath the ancient oak that had withstood the hurricane's fury, scarred but stronger, like their love. The sanctuary flourished beyond their wildest dreams, with endangered species returning to protected lands and their pioneering rehabilitation techniques gaining international recognition. Each success felt like a validation of their passion, both professional and deeply personal. The governor confirmed his attendance, Bob announced one evening, joining Bella on the porch swing where she reviewed donor correspondence. Along with half the environmental leadership in the state, Bella groaned dramatically. I thought we agreed on a small ceremony. Bob chuckled, pulling her against him. Small by New Orleans standards is still 100 people. His lips found her neck, instantly derailing her protests. Besides, they're coming for the power couple of conservation, not for us. Power couple. Bella laughed, turning in his arms. Is that what they're calling us now? Among other things, he murmured against her skin, most of which are entirely accurate regarding how irresistible I find you. Work was forgotten as he lifted her into his arms, carrying her inside with impressive strength, considering his still healing leg. Their passion had only deepened with time, each encounter as electric as their first. Bella reveled in the way Bob worshipped her body, his touch igniting sensations that left her breathless and craving more. I'll never get enough of you, he whispered later as they lay tangled in sheets, her body still trembling from release. A lifetime won't be enough. Bella traced his face in the fading light, overwhelmed by the love she felt. Then we'd better get started on that lifetime. Their peaceful bubble burst the following morning when Alexander arrived unannounced, his expression grave. There's something you both need to see. He opened his laptop, queuing up a video file. This was sent anonymously to several media outlets. Yesterday, I've temporarily blocked its release, but it's only a matter of time. The footage showed a frail elderly man in a hospital bed, identified as Raymond Foster, speaking in labored sentences. Before I die, I need to set the record straight about what happened during Katrina. I was the emergency coordinator who received distress calls from both the Morris rescue boat and the Rose Wildlife Sanctuary. Bob and Bella exchanged confused glances as the man continued. James and Michelle Morris radioed for emergency backup to evacuate families from rising waters. I dispatched our last helicopter, but Robert Rose from the sanctuary intercepted my transmission. He demanded the helicopter be sent to evacuate dangerous predators from his facility instead. Bella gasped in disbelief as the man described a heated radio argument between their fathers. When Rose refused to yield, Morris attempted to reach the staging area himself. In the chaos that followed, both families perished. Those animals were given priority over human lives, a decision that haunts me to this day. The video ended with Foster's tearful apology to the Morris family for keeping this secret all these years. This is absurd, Bella said, her voice shaking. My father would never prioritize animals over people, and my father wouldn't have died because of a radio argument. Bob added, his face ashen. This contradicts everything we know about what happened. Alexander closed the laptop. Foster is dying of late-stage cancer. He has nothing to lose by coming forward now. Except he's not coming forward. He's lying, Bella insisted. We have Dad's logs, the video evidence. None of which specifically refutes this particular claim, Alexander pointed out gently. The implications hung heavily in the room. If the public believed this story, not only would their parents' legacies be tarnished, but the foundation of Bob and Bella's relationship, their shared understanding of similar loss, would be recast as a bitter irony. Bella's father would be blamed for Bob's parents' deaths. I need air, Bob said abruptly, striding from the cabin despite his slight limp. Bella moved to follow, but Alexander caught her arm. Give him space. This is a lot to process. The distance between them grew in the days that followed as the story leaked to several news outlets. Though Bob never explicitly blamed Bella or her father, an invisible barrier had formed. They slept in the same bed but barely touched, each lost in private thoughts. The sanctuary became a target for media speculation, with reporters camping at the gates and donations declining as supporters distanced themselves from the controversy. The wedding planning stalled indefinitely. Talk to me, Bella finally pleaded one night, unable to bear the silence any longer. Tell me what you're thinking. Bob sat at the edge of their bed, shoulders hunched. I don't know what to believe anymore. My whole life I thought my parents died heroes. Now you're considering that my father might be responsible? Bella's voice cracked with hurt. I don't want to, he admitted, eyes meeting hers for the first time in days. But Foster was a respected emergency coordinator. Why would he lie? Why? Did Richard Dawson lie? Bella countered. Money, attention, manipulation by developers who want our land. The reasons don't matter. What matters is that you're letting this come between us. Bob ran a hand through his hair, anguish evident in every line of his body. I'm trying not to, but every time I close my eyes, I hear that man's voice saying your father diverted resources that could have saved my parents. The pain in his admission cut deeper than anger would have. Bella knelt before him, taking his hands in hers. Then we find the truth, together. Not just for us, but for them. Whatever really happened, they deserve that much. A hint of their former connection sparked as he squeezed her hands. Where do we even start? It's been 20 years. With someone who was there, Bella said, determination replacing despair. Someone who might remember the real emergency communications that day. Their search led them to a nursing home in Baton Rouge, where Katrina's former FEMA coordinator Martin Wilkins lived in retirement. Though physically frail, his mind remained sharp, his memory of the disaster's timeline impeccable. Raymond Foster, he mused when they showed him the video, worked the communications center for about 18 hours straight during the worst of it. Good man, but prone to confusion in those final hours before we evacuated the center. Hope fluttered in Bella's chest. Do you remember communications from either James Morris or Robert Rose? The elderly man's eyes clouded with concentration. Morris was coordinating civilian evacuations in the lower ninth. Rose was executing the sanctuary's evacuation protocol. He paused, something troubling him. There was an issue with frequencies that day, emergency channels overlapping, messages getting crossed. Bob leaned forward intently. Crossed how? Foster was receiving fragments of transmissions, not complete messages. I remember because I had to relieve him when he began making allocation errors. Wilkins' gaze sharpened suddenly. He nearly sent rescue resources to an already evacuated area because he misunderstood a transmission. Bella and Bob exchanged glances, the same question in their eyes. Could Foster have misinterpreted the communications between their fathers? Are there records? Bob asked. "Transcripts of the radio communications." "Not written ones," Wilkins replied, "but everything was recorded. Standard protocol. Those recordings should be in the federal archives." The discovery of the existence of these recordings gave them renewed purpose. Through Alexander's connections, they obtained access to the archives, where technicians helped restore degraded audio from Katrina's emergency communications. 3 days of painstaking work yielded the truth neither had dared hope for. The restored recordings revealed a very different reality than Foster's claim. Robert Rose had indeed intercepted a transmission, not to divert resources for animals, but to inform emergency services that his sanctuary could shelter evacuees. James Morris had responded, coordinating with Rose to direct families toward the higher ground of the sanctuary. The fatal miscommunication came when Foster, exhausted and overwhelmed, directed the helicopter to the wrong coordinates. By the time the error was discovered, both families had made desperate attempts to reach each other through the floodwaters, leading to the tragic accidents that claimed their lives. "They were working together," Bella whispered as they listened to the final exchanges between their fathers. Two men united in the effort to save as many lives as possible, human and animal alike. Bob pulled her close, tears streaming down his face. Not rivals, partners. The recordings vindicated both their parents and exposed Foster's deathbed confession as the confused recollections of a man who had carried misplaced guilt for decades. When confronted with the evidence, Foster broke down, admitting he'd been approached by land developers who convinced him his version of events was accurate and should be shared. The media narrative shifted dramatically. What began as a scandal transformed into an inspiring story of two families connected by tragedy and united by their children's love. A full-circle healing that captivated the public imagination. That night, for the first time since the allegations surfaced, Bob and Bella reconnected physically with an intensity born of relief and renewed trust. Each touch was an apology, each kiss a reaffirmation of faith in each other and in the legacy their parents had left them. "I'm sorry I doubted," Bob whispered against her skin as they moved together in the darkness. "You needed truth, not blind faith," Bella replied, drawing him deeper into her body, reclaiming the intimacy they'd nearly lost. Their passion crested together, leaving them breathless and clinging to each other in the aftermath. Bob gathered her against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. "Marry me," he said suddenly. "Not in May, now, this week, no more waiting, no more tests of fate." Bella raised herself on one elbow, searching his face in the moonlight. "You're serious?" "Completely." His hand caressed her cheek. "Haven't we proven that what we have survives every storm? Why wait?" As Bella melted into his kiss, sealing their recommitment without words, neither noticed the small red light blinking on Bob's phone, urgent messages from Alexander about Eleanor's unexpected return to Louisiana and the new threat she posed to their hard-won happiness. Chapter 9. Truth and Consequences. The small chapel on the sanctuary grounds glowed with candlelight as Bella stood before the antique mirror, hardly recognizing herself in the vintage lace dress that had once belonged to her mother. 3 days since Bob's impulsive proposal, and here they were, about to unite their lives officially before their closest friends and family. "You look breathtaking," Jasmine whispered, adjusting the crown of wildflowers in her sister's hair. "Mom would be so proud." Bella took a steadying breath, joy and anticipation fluttering in her chest. After everything they'd overcome, this moment, it felt like a miracle, their love triumphant against all odds. Maya burst into the room, her expression shattering the serenity of the moment. "Eleanor's here," she blurted, "with lawyers. They're demanding to speak with Bob before the ceremony." Cold dread replaced Bella's happiness. What does she want? The divorce was finalized months ago. Something about the trust documents being invalidated by fraud, Maya replied. Alexander's trying to handle it, but she's threatening to get an injunction to stop the wedding. Bella gathered her skirts, determination replacing fear. Not this time. I'm not letting her ruin this day. She found Bob confronting Eleanor outside the chapel, Alexander at his side, reviewing documents thrust at them by Eleanor's attorney. Even now, dressed for vengeance in a sleek black suit, Eleanor's beauty remained undeniable. Cold perfection against which Bella had once felt impossibly inadequate. That time had passed. Bella moved to Bob's side, taking his hand firmly in hers. Her white dress a stark contrast to the tension surrounding them. "Whatever this is," she said calmly, "it can wait until tomorrow." Eleanor's gaze raked over Bella with calculated disdain. "How convenient to hide behind your wedding day when millions in conservation assets are at stake." "Nothing is at stake," Bob replied, his voice level despite the muscle ticking in his jaw. The trust restructuring was completely legal. "Except you failed to disclose your relationship with Ms. Rose during the proceedings." Eleanor's lawyer interjected smoothly. "A relationship that clearly influenced decisions regarding sanctuary funding and expansion, potential conflicts of interest that could invalidate the entire agreement." Alexander pulled Bob and Bella aside, while Eleanor watched with triumphant malice. "She might have a point legally," he admitted quietly. "The timing of the relationship disclosure could be problematic." "So we postpone," Bob said, the words clearly painful. "Deal with this properly?" "No." Bella's voice was surprisingly firm. "That's exactly what she wants, to keep disrupting our lives, to make us doubt ourselves and each other." She turned to face Eleanor directly, years of handling dangerous predators at the sanctuary evident in her unflinching stance. "You've already lost, Eleanor, not just Bob, but the power to hurt us. Whatever legal maneuvers you've planned, file them. We'll face them as husband and wife." A flicker of surprise crossed Eleanor's perfect features, quickly masked by practiced indifference. Such confidence from a woman who nearly lost everything because of a few rumors about her parents. The deliberate cruelty of the reference to their recent ordeal confirmed Bella's suspicions. "You," she realized, "you funded Foster's confession. You're behind the development company, pressuring our lands." Eleanor's slight smile was answer. "Enough? Prove it." Before tension could escalate further, an unexpected figure emerged from a sleek car that had pulled up to the chapel. James Richardson, Eleanor's father and chairman of the trust that had once controlled Bob's conservation holdings. "That's enough, Eleanor," the elderly man said, his authoritative voice halting everyone. "You embarrass yourself and our family with these tactics." Shock registered on Eleanor's face. "Daddy, what are you doing here?" "Preventing you from making an even greater fool of yourself," he replied coldly, nodding respectfully to Bob and Bella. "I apologize for my daughter's behavior. There will be no legal challenge to your trust arrangements." Alexander quickly ushered the older man, Eleanor, and her sputtering lawyer away from the chapel entrance, leaving Bob and Bella in stunned silence. "Did that just happen?" Bella finally asked. Bob pulled her into his arms, uncaring about wedding superstitions regarding seeing the bride before the ceremony. "I think we just received the most unexpected wedding gift possible. Freedom from Eleanor's machinations." "Is it really over?" Bella asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Yes," Bob promised, pressing his forehead to hers. "Now, let's get married before anything else attempts to stop us." The ceremony that followed held a sweetness made more precious by the brief threat to their happiness. Surrounded by those who had stood by them through every challenge, Jasmine and Marcus, Maya and Alexander, sanctuary staff and conservation partners, they exchanged vows beneath an archway of native flowers. "I take you as my partner in all things," Bob's voice resonated with emotion as he slipped a band of reclaimed gold alongside her engagement ring. In sanctuary and storm, in triumph and challenge, for all the days we're granted together. Bella's answering vows came from the depths of her soul, sealing promises tested and proven long before this official moment. When they were pronounced husband and wife, their kiss held the certainty of a love that had already weathered hurricanes, both literal and figurative. The reception unfolded on the sanctuary grounds, lanterns illuminating tables set beneath the stars, as wildlife calls provided a fitting soundtrack to their celebration. Halfway through the evening, Alexander approached, with news from his private conversation with James Richardson. "Eleanor's been removed from the family foundation," he reported quietly. "James was appalled when I showed him evidence linking her to the developers and Foster's false testimony. He's offering additional funding for the sanctuary as apology." Bob shook his head in wonder. After all this time, her own father finally saw through her. "Some truths can't stay buried forever," Bella replied, thinking of their own journey to vindicate their parents. Later, as they danced beneath the Louisiana moon, Bob drew her close against his heart. "Any regrets about marrying a man who comes with so much complicated history?" Bella tilted her face up to his, love evident in every line of her expression. "The only thing I regret is every day we spent apart." His kiss held promises of the night to come, the passion they both knew awaited them when they could finally be alone as husband and wife. That passion ignited the moment they entered the private cabin Alexander had arranged as their wedding. Sweet, a luxurious retreat at the edge of the sanctuary's bayou. Bob lifted Bella into his arms the instant the door closed behind them, her laughter turning to sighs as his lips found the sensitive spot beneath her ear. "Mrs. Morris," he murmured, the name a caress against her skin as he lowered her onto the bed. "I like the sound of that," Bella whispered, helping him remove the delicate lace dress, revealing the silk beneath that had been her secret all day. Knowing how it would affect him, his sharp intake of breath confirmed her intuition. "You've been wearing this under that innocent dress all day?" Her smile held wicked promise, something borrowed, something blue. Their wedding night ignited a passion that surpassed all they'd shared before, bodies communicating what words could never fully express. Bob's reverent exploration of her body felt like worship, his lips tracing promises against her heated skin as she surrendered completely to sensation. Their connection transcended the physical, each caress and whispered endearment weaving their souls together until neither could tell where one ended and the other began. When they finally collapsed in breathless fulfillment, both knew a fundamental truth: they had been remade, forged by fire and pleasure into something unbreakable. "I never imagined this kind of happiness," Bob confessed, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "After my parents died, I thought the best I could hope for was purpose. You've given me so much more." Bella pressed a kiss to his chest, directly over his heart. "We heal each other," she said simply. They would be proud of that, both our families. As dawn broke over the bayou outside their window, neither suspected that their greatest challenge still awaited, a final test that would require everything they'd learned about trust, sacrifice, and the healing power of love. 3 weeks later, returning from their honeymoon, exploring coastal conservation areas in the Caribbean, Bella felt the first wave of unexplained dizziness as they landed in New Orleans. By the time they reached the sanctuary, nausea had joined the lightheadedness. "You should rest," Bob insisted, concern evident as he helped her to their bed. "I'll have Dr. Reynolds come out to check on you." The diagnosis, delivered the following morning, struck them both speechless. Pregnancy confirmed by blood test, approximately 6 weeks along. "A baby," Bella whispered after the doctor departed, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Our baby." Bob sat beside her on the bed, wonder and concern battling in his expression. "Are you happy about this? We never discussed children." Terrified, she admitted with a small laugh. "But yes, so happy." She searched his face anxiously. "Are you?" His answer came not in words, but in the reverent way he placed his hand over hers, tears gathering in his eyes. "A family of our own," he said, voice rough with emotion, "something I stopped hoping for long ago." As Bella's pregnancy progressed, the sanctuary flourished alongside her growing belly. Bob became endearingly protective, managing expansion projects, so she could focus on less strenuous rehabilitation work. Their evenings were spent planning both the sanctuary's future and their child's nursery, their happiness seemingly complete. Yet happiness, as they'd learned repeatedly, remained vulnerable to the world's harsh realities. In her 4th month, as Bella underwent routine testing, their doctor requested an urgent meeting. "There are concerning markers in your blood work," Dr. Reynolds explained gently. "Given your sister's history of leukemia, we need to investigate immediately." The words fell like stones between them. The possibility that the same cancer that had nearly taken Jasmine might now threaten Bella and their unborn child. "What about the baby?" Bella asked, her hand instinctively cradling her small bump. "If we confirm leukemia, you'll face impossible choices," the doctor admitted. "Treatment during pregnancy carries significant risks to fetal development." The drive home passed in stunned silence, both processing the cruel twist fate had delivered. That night, as Bella curled against Bob's chest, tears finally came, not just for herself, but for the child who might lose its mother before ever knowing her. "I can't lose you," Bob whispered into her hair, his voice breaking. "Not after everything. We've survived to be together." "You won't," Bella promised, though fear gripped her heart. "Whatever happens, our baby will have you." Days of agonizing waiting followed, with additional tests and consultations with specialists. Bob barely left Bella's side, handling sanctuary operations remotely while accompanying her to every appointment. When the final results arrived, they sat together in Dr. Reynolds' office, hands clasped so tightly their knuckles whitened. "It's not leukemia," the doctor announced, relief evident in her expression. The markers were elevated due to a rare but manageable blood condition triggered by pregnancy. "With proper monitoring, both you and the baby should be fine." The wave of relief left them both speechless, clinging to each other as the shadow of potential tragedy lifted. That evening, celebrating their reprieve with a quiet dinner on their porch overlooking the sanctuary, Bob raised his glass of sparkling cider to match Bella's. "To second chances," he said softly, "and to the incredible woman who taught me how to embrace them." Bella's answering smile held all the love and gratitude she felt for this man who had walked through fire alongside her, emerging stronger with each trial they faced together. "And to our greatest adventure yet," she replied, her free hand resting on the swell where their child grew, living proof that from life's deepest wounds, the most beautiful healing could emerge. Chapter 10. Eternal Wilderness. The golden July. Sun draped the sanctuary in shimmering heat as Bella moved with deliberate grace across the observation deck, her 8-month pregnant belly a perfect globe beneath her flowing sundress. Her skin glowed with an almost otherworldly radiance that transformed even her discomfort into something beautiful. Below, Bob commanded the rapt attention of 20 schoolchildren gathered around a recently rescued bald eagle. His deep voice carried upward as he knelt to a small girl's level, his hands, once used only for signing billion-dollar contracts, now demonstrating with gentle precision how the raptor's injured wing would heal. "Your husband moves between boardrooms and eagles' nests like he was born for both worlds," Maya observed, joining Bella at the railing. "Those children worship him. Perfect training for fatherhood. Bella's throat tightened with emotion, watching. The man she'd transformed through love, his powerful frame relaxed, his formerly guarded expression now open and animated with passion as he inspired the next generation of conservationists. "He was always meant for this life," she whispered. "He just needed someone to help him remember." The past 5 months had been a whirlwind of preparation, both for the baby and for the sanctuary's continued expansion. With Eleanor's threats neutralized and her father's foundation now actively supporting their work, the Morris Rose Wildlife Conservation Network had become the largest private rehabilitation organization in the southeastern United States. More precious than this professional success was the deepening of their bond as they prepared for parenthood. Bob had thrown himself into creating the perfect nursery, repurposing wood from storm-damaged sanctuary structures to craft a crib and rocking chair with his own hands. Each evening, he read nature books aloud to Bella's growing belly, his deep voice soothing both mother and child. Their passion for each other had only intensified with pregnancy, Bob's desire for her undimmed by her changing body. If anything, he seemed to worship her more, his touch reverent as he traced the new curves that sheltered their child, his love-making tender yet no less passionate as they found creative ways to accommodate her condition. "Have you decided on a name yet?" Maya asked, interrupting Bella's intimate thoughts. "We have 2 possibilities," Bella replied, her hand caressing her rounded abdomen. "If it's a girl, Catherine Michelle, after both our mothers. If a boy, James Robert, after our fathers." The choice reflected everything their relationship had become, an honoring of the past, while building toward a future neither had dared imagine before finding each other. That night, unable to find comfort in the summer heat, Bella stood by their bedroom window. The full moon cast silver light across the sanctuary grounds, illuminating the new rehabilitation center that bore both their names, a testament to what they'd built together. Strong arms encircled her from behind, Bob's hands cradling her belly protectively as he pressed a kiss to her neck. "Can't sleep?" "Your son or daughter is practicing kickboxing," she replied, leaning back against his solid warmth. "And it's too hot." "I have a suggestion," Bob murmured, his breath tickling her ear. "Remember our special place?" 30 minutes later, they sat in the small boat, gliding through moonlit waters toward the hidden island where they'd first surrendered to their feelings for each other. The night air was cooler over the water, bringing welcome relief from the heat that had plagued Bella for weeks. "Should we be doing this in your condition?" Bob asked, concern mixing with excitement as he helped her from the boat onto the small wooden platform. "The doctor said normal activities are fine," Bella reminded him, settling onto the blanket he'd spread. "Besides, I needed this, to be back where everything truly began for us." The bayou spread around them like liquid silver, night creatures calling softly from the surrounding wilderness. Above, stars punctuated the velvet sky, seemingly close enough to touch in the clear summer air. "I've been thinking," Bob said, his arm around her shoulders as they gazed up at the constellations, "about how close we came to never finding each other, if your sanctuary hadn't been in trouble, if you hadn't attended that gala, if you hadn't saved me from that drunk donor," Bella added with a smile. "If I hadn't been looking for an excuse to talk to the most captivating woman I'd ever seen," he countered, pressing a kiss to her temple. Bella turned in his arms, her eyes meeting his in the moonlight. "Do you believe in fate, Bob Morris? That some things are simply meant to be?" "I believe in this," he replied, his hand covering hers where it rested on her belly. "In us, in the family we're creating." Their kiss held the sweet familiarity of deep love and the ever-present spark that had drawn them together from the beginning. Even now, with her body transformed by their child, desire kindled between them with remarkable ease. I want you, she whispered against his lips, need evident in her voice. Bob's eyes darkened with answering hunger. Are you sure? Here. Especially here, she confirmed. Where we began. With infinite tenderness, he helped her find a comfortable position, supporting her with gentle hands as they joined beneath the Louisiana stars. Their lovemaking held none of the desperate urgency of their first time on this island, replaced by a profound intimacy born of shared struggles and triumphs. When they found release together, Bella's tears mingled with joy at the perfection of this moment, their past and future merging in the eternal present of their connection. Afterward, as they lay entwined on the blanket, the baby kicked strongly. Against Bob's palm. Someone approves, he chuckled, voice filled with wonder, or disapproves of being jostled. Bella countered with a laugh that quickly transformed into a gasp as a sharper pain followed the kick. Bella, Bob's voice sharpened with concern. Probably nothing, she assured him, though unease flickered through her. Braxton Hicks contractions. I've been having them for weeks. Another pain, stronger than before, seized her moments later. This time there was no mistaking its meaning, especially when warmth flooded between her thighs. My water just broke, she whispered, disbelief and fear mingling in her voice. Bob, the baby's coming now! Panic flashed briefly across his face before his natural decisiveness took over. We need to get back to the mainland. The return journey through the bayou became a nightmare of increasing contractions and Bob's desperate attempts to reach help on his satellite phone. The baby, apparently determined to enter the world in dramatic fashion, was progressing far too quickly for a first delivery. The hospital's an hour away even after we reach land, Bob said, his voice tight with controlled fear as he navigated the boat through dark waters. The sanctuary's closer, but another contraction gripped Bella, stealing her breath. When it passed, she made the decision they both feared. We won't make it. This baby is coming now. 20 minutes later, they reached the small cabin Bob, maintained for researchers at the edge of the sanctuary property, the closest shelter available. Inside, with only moonlight and emergency lanterns illuminating the rustic space, Bella fought through increasingly powerful contractions, while Bob made frantic preparations, following emergency dispatcher instructions through his satellite phone. I can feel the head, Bella gasped after an hour of labor that felt simultaneously endless and too swift. Bob, I need to push. What followed tested everything they'd learned about each other through their many trials. Bob's steady hands belied his terror as he guided their child into the world, his voice a constant reassurance despite the fear evident in his eyes. One more push, he encouraged, strength flowing between them like an electric current. You're doing beautifully, my love. One more, with a final primal cry that echoed through the wilderness around them. Bella brought their daughter into waiting hands, a perfect miracle emerging from darkness into life. The cabin filled with the powerful sound of new lungs demanding to be heard, a fierce announcement of existence that matched her mother's strength. Bob's hands, which had guided billion-dollar negotiations with steady confidence, now trembled uncontrollably as he cut the cord binding mother to child, tears streaming unashamedly down his face. Catherine Michelle Morris, he whispered, with reverence, placing their daughter, slick with the evidence of her journey and crowned with a shock of dark hair, against Bella's heart. His voice broke as he added, she fought her way into this world as powerfully as you fought for everything you love. She's magnificent, just like her mother. As Bella cradled their miracle against her skin, the early dawn light began filtering through the cabin windows. Outside, birds welcomed the new day with song that seemed, to the exhausted new parents, like nature's own celebration of their daughter's arrival. When emergency medical help finally reached them hours later, mother and baby were pronounced healthy. Despite the unconventional delivery, As they were transported to the hospital for monitoring, Bob held Bella's hand tightly, his expression one of profound awe. "You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known," he said, voice rough with emotion. "What you just did." Bella smiled tiredly, her eyes never leaving their sleeping daughter's face. "We did it together, like everything else." 3 days later, they brought Catherine home to the sanctuary, her first cries having already imprinted on the wilderness that would be her inheritance. The nursery Bob had so lovingly prepared welcomed its tiny occupant, though Catherine spent most of her time cradled against one parent or the other, unwilling to be separated from the heartbeats that had sustained her. As summer gave way to fall, their daughter thrived alongside the sanctuary. Bob proved himself as devoted a father as he was a husband, wearing Catherine in a carrier against his chest while conducting sanctuary business, ensuring Bella had time to heal and gradually return to the conservation work she loved. On Catherine's 3-month birthday, they stood together on the observation deck overlooking the rehabilitation enclosures, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Bella's arms as the setting sun painted the sanctuary in golden light. "I received an interesting offer today," Bob said, his arm around Bella's waist. "The governor wants to establish a statewide conservation initiative based on our model here. They're offering substantial funding." Bella looked up at him, reading the barely contained excitement in his eyes. "You want to do it?" "Only if you're with me every step," he replied. "This would be our legacy together. Protection for every significant wilderness area in Louisiana, the largest conservation effort in state history." Pride swelled in Bella's chest at the man beside her. How far he'd come from the closed-off billionaire she'd met at that charity gala, what seemed a lifetime ago. "Our parents would be amazed," she said softly. "Everything they fought for expanded beyond anything they could have imagined. And something new that's entirely our own," Bob added, pressing a kiss to Catherine's downy head. "A future for her and children everywhere." As darkness settled over the sanctuary, they walked, hand in hand, back to their cabin, now expanded into a comfortable family home. After settling Catherine in her crib, they stood watching their daughter sleep, the miracle of her existence still overwhelming 3 months after her dramatic arrival. "Thank you," Bob whispered, drawing Bella into his arms. "For what?" "For saving me," he replied simply. "I was drowning in emptiness before you crashed into my life. You gave me purpose again. Love. Family." Bella rose on tiptoe to kiss him, pouring all her love into the connection. "We saved each other." Later, in their bedroom, passion ignited between them with familiar heat, the first time since Catherine's birth that both desire and recovery aligned. Their lovemaking held the tenderness of new parents and the fire that had characterized their connection from the beginning. Bob's reverence for her body, now marked with scars of childbirth, only deepening the intimacy between them. "I fall more in love with you every day," he confessed afterward, holding her close against his heart. "Just when I think it's impossible to love you more, you prove me wrong." Bella traced the strong lines of his face in the moonlight filtering through their window. "That's what true love does," she replied. "It keeps growing, keeps healing, keeps surprising us." As they drifted toward sleep in each other's arms, the sounds of the sanctuary surrounded them, a symphony of wild things that had brought them together and now provided the backdrop for their daughter's childhood. The wilderness that had once seemed a place of loss for both their families had become the foundation of something beautiful, a love story written not just in their passion for each other, but in their shared vision for the future. 5 years later, on a perfect spring morning, Bob and Bella stood hand in hand at the entrance to the newly dedicated Morris Rose Wildlife Corridor. a protected passage connecting thousands of acres of critical habitat throughout Louisiana. Catherine, now a spirited 5-year-old with her mother's wild curls and her father's penetrating grey eyes, sat proudly on Bob's shoulders. Beside them, their 3-year-old son James toddled curiously at Bella's side, already showing his father's deliberate nature and his mother's compassion for all living things. The governor's speech praised their unprecedented achievement in conservation, but Bob and Bella barely registered the words, lost in their own private moment of reflection. From a chance meeting at a charity gala to this incredible legacy, their journey had been marked by passion, sacrifice, and an unbreakable bond that had only strengthened through each challenge they faced. "Did you ever imagine this?" Bella asked softly, squeezing his hand as cameras flashed around them. "Not until I met you," Bob replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed me what was possible when you love without limits." That night, after the children were asleep, they returned to their special island, now part of a protected sanctuary expanding far beyond their original property. The wooden platform had been replaced with a more permanent structure, though they still spread a blanket beneath the stars as they had on their first night together. "Full circle," Bob murmured, drawing Bella into his arms as they gazed up at the same constellations that had witnessed their first declarations of love. "From the night I almost lost you to Eleanor's schemes, to this, everything we dreamed of and more." "Not quite full circle," Bella corrected, a mysterious smile playing on her lips as she guided his hand to her stomach. "More like a new beginning." Bob's eyes widened with understanding, joy illuminating his features as he pulled her close. "Another baby? You're sure?" Her answering kiss was confirmation enough, passion flaring between them with the same intensity that had marked their relationship from the beginning. As he laid her back against the blanket, their bodies joining in the familiar dance of desire and fulfillment, Bella knew with absolute certainty that this, their love, their family, their shared purpose, was what both sets of parents had ultimately died protecting. Not just wilderness, but the possibility of healing, of renewal, of love finding its way even through the most devastating storms. "I love you," Bob whispered against her lips as they moved together beneath the Louisiana stars. "Today, tomorrow, always." "Always," Bella echoed, surrendering completely to the man who had transformed her life from lonely struggle to passionate purpose. As they found release together, bodies trembling in perfect unison, she knew that whatever challenges still awaited them, they would face them as they had faced everything else, together, stronger for having been tested and bound by a love as wild and enduring as the wilderness they had pledged to protect. In the gentle aftermath, cradled in each other's arms with the promise of new life growing between them, they recognized the profound truth their journey had taught them, that real love, like nature itself, couldn't be tamed or controlled, only cherished and protected. And in that eternal wilderness of the heart, they had finally completely found their home.